So now that we have our buildings, we can start generating this tiling alpha. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to kind of zoom my canvas out some. So I'm going to come over here to the top and I'm just going to click on this zoom and drag. And this is going to scale my canvas out a little bit. So now you're going to be able to see the actual extents of that actual canvas there. Now my model is still in 3D, so I can still rotate around it like so and kind of position it where I want it. So this is going to allow me to come through and start populating these buildings along the canvas here to create this tiling alpha texture. Now before I start this, I want to come over here and just turn off perspective as well, so I want to make sure I'm looking at these buildings from top down. I'm also going to turn off polyframes, so I'm just looking at the buildings in their actual natural state here. So I just have one of these buildings selected. At any time I can come over here and I can actually switch to the other buildings. And I'm going to go through now and get the actual biggest building that I have, so say like this building here, and just kind of look at it in terms of size and scale, and just kind of position it on my canvas like so. So this is going to end up being my kind of starting block for scale based along all these other buildings here. Now the process I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually just place my model here on the canvas, so just moving it around in 3D space, and then when I have it in a location that I like, I'm going to press and hold Shift and then hit S. Now the Shift S will actually snapshot your actual image there and turn it into 2.5D. So after that is locked into the canvas like so, I can then just hold Alt and click and drag, and now I have my 3D object here that I can still manipulate, but this other object is now snapped to the actual 2.5D canvas. So with this, I can come through and start placing buildings like so, and then hit Shift S, place another building, say over here, Shift S, another building, Shift S. Maybe I want to rotate that building, so reposition it. Shift S, maybe rotate him again. Shift S, and you can see I can quickly come through and start populating an entire city with all these tools over here. Switch to another building and just come over here and select it. Now I can place this guy, find out where I want him, Shift S, maybe rotate him a little bit. Shift S, maybe start another city area down here. Shift S, maybe select the next building. Shift S, and I'm just going to go through quickly and just populate this entire area with buildings. So this is probably going to be time lapsed here, so you guys don't have to sit through me doing this for every single little building. But basically I'm just building little blocks of buildings here and just positioning like so. Now since this is a cityscape, just make sure you don't overhang your buildings like this off the edge there. So just keep them pretty much on screen as you're actually doing this. And this will help in the actual generation of this city here. So now this part has been sped up here, and you can just see I'm going through and selecting a different subtool, rotating and moving each of the individual buildings and then placing them, and then hitting that Shift S and then selecting another subtool and repeating the process. And so at this stage I'm just trying to fill in all the empty space here. So just going through and trying to rotate the buildings so they're not too obvious that they're the same building positioned twice or 3 or 4 times in the actual scene here. And this process is very fast. This whole thing even sped up here was like under 3 minutes, I think, to just populate this whole scene here. So lots of detail and different things you can actually do with this using this 2.5D system here inside of ZBrush. So I'm getting closer to having all these areas packed in, and I'm down to the actual taller buildings in the scene. So the ones that are generating the large areas of skyline change in the actual city. And just making sure I don't position these guys next to each other. And then just kind of doing the random rotational and offset positions like so. Here's one of the bigger ones. This guy's a little bit difficult to place because of his large footprint. And that's pretty much the extent of using the 2.5D system here to kind of place these buildings where you want them to go. Now if you run out of space on your map, so I got most of the city built in, but I have one more large building and I can't really find kind of any locations to kind of put this guy in. So what you can do is you can also erase areas of your actual canvas here pretty easily as well. So to do this, just come over here to your actual tool palette and select the actual eraser brush. Now when you click the eraser brush, you're going to get this dialog that's going to pop up. And here we're just going to hit switch. And this is just going to tell you that you're out of edit mode now and you're strictly in 2.5D. And then I'm going to come through here and just with the eraser brush selected, I'm just going to clear out an area of the actual mesh here. It's just coming through and erasing like so. And this is going to erase some of those buildings that I already placed on the actual 2.5D canvas here. Now this process is undoable, so if you find that you mess up or you erase too much, you can always just hit Control Z and it'll bring it right back. So I'm going to come through and just erase 2 areas here to kind of make a little more room for this gigantic building I had. So just coming through, erasing this area over here too. So hopefully that should be enough. Now I'm going to go back and select the building again. And now I'm going to redraw that out on my canvas. Now when I redraw it out, I'm going to go back into edit mode. And I'm going to rotate it. And since I had all these buildings kind of the same kind of proportion or size, what I'm going to do is go back to my subtool list and select one of the buildings already placed. And then just scale that up a little bit, just zooming in some. And then finding the actual object that I placed here originally. If I can find this guy here. And he's right here. And it's just going to zoom in and rotate this guy and kind of scale him back to the original position like so. That's roughly the right size. And then I'm going to switch back to the larger building and then just position him where I want him to go. So he's going to go right here up in the corner, and we're actually going to rotate around him a little bit more and then just position him. So there we go. He's there now, and then I'll move him over here for the last building right there. So now I have all these buildings generated, but you'll notice I don't have any roads kind of connecting these buildings, so they can't really get to the buildings in my city here. So I'm going to use the eraser brush and come through and I'm actually start generating some roads. So I'm going to go back to the tool palette over here and I'm going to select the eraser brush. Then I'm going to click switch on the actual dialog that pops up. Then I'm going to come over here to the actual stroke menu over here and click on that. And I'm going to select line. Then I'm going to change a few more settings on the actual eraser brush as well. I'm first going to adjust the focal shift down to -100, and then I'm going to come up to stroke and open up the actual modifiers tab here and change the spacing to 2. Now with the eraser brush selected, I'm just going to hover off my canvas here and hold spacebar. Just give it a little bit of a smaller draw size, let's say something like that. And then we come to the top here and just simply click and drag. And you'll notice that it's going to drag a line straight through there with the eraser brush. And this is going to allow me to erase out areas like this to kind of generate roads. Now you'll notice as I'm doing this, I'm actually splitting some of these buildings in half. So you kind of want to go through and make sure when you actually draw these roads in, you're not like really destroying some really large buildings here. If you don't like any of this erased kind of line you just generated, you can always undo. So you just take Control Z and it'll bring it back to where it was before you actually performed that action. So I'm going to come through now and switch to a little smaller draw size here and just start generating some roads. So I'm going to drag here, drag all the way across like so. You can also hold shift to generate a straight line like that. And I'm just going to come through and start making some quick roads here. So that looks pretty good there. And then maybe one through here, just say like there. We got that one connecting. You can do diagonal lines as well. Just make sure when you do the diagonal lines, you probably want to have them end in the middle section so it doesn't break the actual tiling on the outer edges. So I'm going to come through and do another horizontal line through here, like so. And then maybe diagonal from here to this road, right about there. And the nice thing about using this kind of eraser functionality is that you're going to generate even more kind of random shapes to those buildings. So you don't have to have a lot of buildings kind of generated to get a pretty good looking city using this kind of approach. And then we'll draw this guy up through here, go all the way through like that. And then maybe we'll continue this one down to there. So there we go. So now we got some roads kind of generating our city here. Now, when I was generating these roads, you see I left some little straggler bits through here. So I'm going to go back over to the stroke menu over here and change this back to dots and keep my focal shift where it's at. And now I'm just going to come through and erase some of these areas that wouldn't really be buildings. So I'm come through and just erase any little parts that I've left behind here. Just clean that up a little bit. And I'm just going to go through and do that for all these areas. You can also come back through and add more buildings if you want now. So say you actually subtracted a little bit too much, and now you want to come back and add in a new building to an area. You can do that as well. So just doing the same process we were doing originally. And since it's 2.5D, you can kind of update, erase, go through and change a whole bunch of stuff until you get exactly what you're kind of looking for. I'm going to erase this part of that building there. So that looks pretty good. We got one more part there. So there we go. So now we have some kind of roads driving through our actual city here. So the final thing we want to do is we want to take this 2.5D canvas here and then generate an alpha map from it. To do this, the process is really simple. You just need to come over here to the actual alpha tab over here and then open up the actual transfer palette and then just click grab dock. Now after you hit grab dock, you'll see we now have an alpha that's been created that contains all the gradient values for the different heights of the actual buildings. So now we need to do one more thing. We actually need to export out this alpha that we just created. So we're come up to the top here and click on alpha, and then we're just going to make sure we have that alpha selected, and we're just going to go to export. And we're just going to save this out. Just come down here and rename this. And just hit OK. So now we have all this generated. We have our alpha exported out. We're ready to actually turn this into real geometry.